Hi, this is Congressman Thomas Massie. I'm excited to talk to you today about food freedom and my fight for it here in the halls of Congress. I'm a small farmer. My wife and kids and I live on a farm in Kentucky that my wife grew up on, and we raise beef cattle there, grass-fed beef cattle. I think it's so important that we have reliable and sustainable food supply in this country, one that's not completely controlled by corporations, one that's locally provided for and robust during times of crisis. If we learned anything from COVID, one of the things we learned was that we have a very brittle food supply in this country. You literally saw farmers who had to euthanize hogs and chickens because there wasn't the ability to have them processed and get them into the supply chain. And that was very troubling to me, somebody who cares for his animals, to see animals being euthanized. And it wasn't necessary. Let me tell you what led to that problem. We have 4 meat packers that control 85% of the meat that is processed in this country. One of those meat packers is owned completely by the Chinese, and another one of those meat packers is owned by Brazil. The other 2 are multinational corporations. Farmers are going broke. Meanwhile, you see prices go up at the supermarket for protein, and that's tragic to me. I've got a bill that would solve that, not by going in and breaking up these monopolies, but by empowering the small farmers and the small processors that used to flourish in our country, that provide safe food locally and actually more sustainably than anything a corporation could ever do. My bill is called the Prime Act. It's very simple. It says if a farmer wants to sell pork or beef or lamb to a consumer, as long as that consumer and that farmer and the processor are all in the same state, they're not crossing state lines, they keep the federal government out of that transaction. In other words, if the processor is following the county health department guidelines and the state guidelines, then the processor doesn't have to have a full-time federal employee on site like a big corporation would. The regulations on the little guy right now are just as onerous as the regulations that are on the big guys. They're scale prejudicial. And this makes it harder for a farmer to sell meat to their neighbor, in fact. You can sell them a whole animal or half an animal as long as they buy it while it's alive, because the government hasn't yet stopped you from having your own animal processed. But that's the only loophole that exists for beef, pork, and lamb. So I've been fighting on that. My bill's called the Prime Act. If you would let your congressman know they should support it, I'm going to reintroduce it again. During COVID, my bill went from 24 co-sponsors to 50 co-sponsors in the House. And we have roughly 9 co-sponsors in the Senate. By the way, in the House and the Senate, we have co-sponsors from both parties. In fact, Angus King, ironically, the name is ironic to me, is the sponsor of the Prime Act in the Senate. So tell your senator or your U.S. congressman, please back the Prime Act. I've got another bill that deals with raw milk. I think we should call it fresh milk. I've been drinking fresh milk, and my family has for a very long time. We get it from another farmer, can't say who, but it's ridiculous to me that the federal government will raid a farm, pour out all the milk, confiscate all of their equipment, a small farm, if they commit the unforgivable crime of selling somebody fresh milk, and that person is in another state than the farmer is. And that's actually the FDA that does that, not the USDA. My friend Joel Salatin calls them the FDA and the USDA, if you wanted to pronounce those acronyms, because what they do makes you go, duh. The FDA doesn't even have a law that enables them to, prosecute farmers, but they do anyway, because in the 1980s, there was a court decision, and the FDA said it wasn't worth their time. There were so few incidents associated with raw milk that it wasn't worth their time to regulate it, and it wasn't within their purview to regulate. But they lost that lawsuit, and so as a result of the settlement, they decided to use an existing law that has nothing to do with raw milk to regulate raw milk when it's transferred across state lines. I call it pasteurization without representation. When I first introduced this bill, the milk lobby came after me. They said that people would die and the blood would be on Congressman Nass's hands. My wife saw all of these attacks on me and texted me. She was in Kentucky and I was in DC, and she said, OMG, I didn't realize the lactose lobby was this intolerant. But it is kind of funny that you have a lobby that's supposed to be promoting a product. Meanwhile, they're trying to tell the public that this product could kill people. The reality is, you can buy raw beef, you can buy raw oysters, you can buy raw seafood, you buy raw vegetables, you can buy anything raw except for milk. I find it ridiculous, especially because milk directly from the farm can be consumed by a lot of people who think they're lactose intolerant. I was one of them. I thought I was lactose intolerant. And until I tried fresh raw milk and realized, wow, it's just the fact that this has been homogenized and pasteurized, and the nutrients and all the helpful biotics that are in it have been taken out through the processing of it. And so once I tried fresh milk, not only was I able to digest it, it was helpful to my body for a lot of other health reasons. So those are two things that I'm fighting for. My bill on the raw milk issue is called the Interstate Milk Freedom Act. I may change the name of it this Congress, but if you can talk to your representatives, you've actually got one U.S. representative and 2 senators, so you only need to make 3 phone calls. Please ask them to back Congressman Massie's raw milk bill and Congressman Massie's Prime Act. I'm hopeful to get some form of the Prime Act in the Farm Bill this year. Ever so often, the Congress brings up a bill called the Farm Bill. Unfortunately, it's mostly all about food stamps, which ironically you can use to buy sugary soda full of cornstarch and not good for you. So we're subsidizing the purchase in the Farm Bill. We're subsidizing the purchase of pop or soda, but we outlawed the purchase of healthy beef. So I'm going to try to change that issue for the beef and pork and lamb so that you can buy it locally. By the way, it's a lot greener. You don't have to transport these animals across state lines to the Midwest and feed them corn and then transfer them back to some East Coast state where the cow started, just because of these regulations and save on all the fuel and everything else. So anyways, that's a little bit about what I'm doing for food freedom here in Congress. I would also encourage you to help get the laws changed in your state. Some of the states have issues. And this is so important because you are what you eat. And I know this from raising animals on my farm. In addition to my cattle, I have chickens and ducks. The time you get sick animals when you don't feed them nutritional feed. If I get bad hay, then I notice my cattle don't do as well. And there's no amount of medicine that would be healthy to give animals to make up for bad nutrition. And it's the same for people. We need a lot fewer pharmaceuticals in this country. Maybe that's why they don't want you to get good food. But we need a lot fewer pharmaceuticals in this country if we had more healthy food that had the nutrients that your body needs. So work at the state level, make phone calls here in Congress. Please support me on these bills. I appreciate everything that you all are doing. This will make our country more independent. It'll make us safer. We'll be more robust during times of pandemics, for instance, and people will just be healthier. So thanks for what you're all doing. Thanks for joining this event, and I'll see you on C-SPAN.